Morning class of 8. Nice to be back with you all. And I'm going to take your Radiant Reader. I'm going to start with Radiant Reader, lesson number 3. It's a very exciting chapter. It's all about being caught in a blizzard. Now, those people who have traveled to cold countries would know what a blizzard is. A blizzard is a heavy downfall of snow and wind blowing to a huge extent. So fast winds and snow, it makes it very difficult to see. You cannot see ahead of you. And so this story is all about being caught in a blizzard. This story is taken from a book written by a well-known woman traveler. Now this well-known woman traveler, she tells us of a journey made by reindeer sleighs. Sleighs that are drawn by reindeer. These sleighs are drawn across Lapland, okay? So it's called near Finland. So in the far north of Europe. So right to the north of Europe, a Lapp named Per. Now people who live in Laplands are called Lapps. What are they called? Lapps, remember. So there was a Lapp who was named Per. He was aided by a companion in charge of the sledge. So this pair, he had a companion who was in charge of his sledge. The Lapp rides in baggage sledges called pulkas. So the Lapp, he rides on a sleigh which has baggage. Okay, so the sleigh is like a long kind of a contraption in which you put your bags and all that, and at the back of that you climb on the sleigh and you hold it with your hand and you stand, and then the reindeers or the huskies, they pull the sleigh and you move forward, but you have to stand. You cannot sit on the sleigh. You have to stand and you have to control the sleigh and turn it left, right, like you're driving a car or something. So these sleighs that carry luggage and human are called pulkas. So let's start with the story. It was dusk, which was fast approaching as we left Romsdale. Romsdale is a place. At first the drive was sheer delight. The sky had cleared and the evening glow on the mountains, the clear frosty air and the new adventure that I was enjoying all served to put me in the highest of spirits. I felt I could go on happily like this for hours. So this is a little description of when the Lapp man left Romsdale and they started out on their journey. And the first leg of the drive is being described. He describes it as sheer delight because he hadn't come across the blizzard as yet. So he says the air was clear and frosty and it was beautiful and it was an adventure which he was enjoying. With the approach of darkness, however, things became less pleasant, for the cold increased considerably, and as we began to climb slowly up into the hills, we met icy winds, which forced me to cover my face with the woolen shawl and made me think with regret of shelter and the joys of a warm fire. So as they went further up and as it turned into dusk, the weather started changing. It became very chill. There were icy winds blowing and they had to climb very slowly up into the hills. And the icy winds was so cold that he had to cover himself with a shawl. And all he wanted was to get into a place, to get into a shelter, like an inn, a traveler's inn, and to sit by a warm fire. After a while, we reached a bare, windswept plateau. So after a while, they reached an open plateau which was swept by the wind, which seemed to be in the very heart of the mountains. Far in the distance, I heard the dismal, long-drawn note of some dogs howling. At least I hoped they were dogs, for the sound was unpleasant like the baying of wolves. Whatever it was too far away to be alarming. So when they reached the bare windswept plateau, he seemed to hear the sounds of the dog, like the cry of the dog. But at the same time, the howling of the dog seemed to be more like the baying of a animal. Okay, and normally the wolves they bay. When they howl, it's called baying. Okay, so he felt that it was the baying of the wolves and not the dogs. But in any way, it was he realized that the sound was coming from very far away. So there was no cause for danger. Peeping out from beneath the shelter of my shawl, I took a hasty look around and saw we had come upon a solitary lad seated on a log. He was resting his reindeer and we stopped to do the same. So while he was traveling, he picked out his shawl and he peeped through his shawl that was covering his face, and he saw that a little further away there was a lad who was sitting on a log of wood and resting with his sleigh. So he also decided to do the same. Pear and his friend lit their pipes and talked with the lamp for some while. After they had exchanged greetings in the customary way by placing their right hand on each other's shoulder and murmuring "Boris, Boris," that is the way a lad always does. This on meeting another, after which the two exchange snuff or tobacco and politely inquire after each other's families or reindeers. So here we get to know the way the laps greet each other. Even if you are a stranger, you don't talk to each other. They put their hands on the shoulder and they thump it twice. And while they're doing it, they say Boris, Boris. Boris, Boris means good day, oh how are you, oh welcome, welcome. So it's like a kind of a greeting. Here we have greetings, good day, goodbye, and hello and good morning and so on and so forth. But over there, when you meet a stranger, the first thing you say Boris, Boris. So that is like a kind of a warm greeting. Now if you go to Fiji Islands, over there they say aloha. So it's like in Fiji Islands they say aloha. So that is a kind of a common greeting given to a male or a female. So when you come across a Fijian person, he always yells out and says aloha. So aloha is like a kind of a common greeting both for males and females. So here it's the same way. Boris, a common greeting. He greeted the man, and then normally men they do exchange. They exchange tobaccos. They politely exchange tobacco or snuff. Snuff is like a kind of a powder that is made of tobacco, which you sniff. You sniff it up your nose. And it helps you to sneeze, and it's a reddish kind of powder made from tobacco. Chickeny. I think in Hindi, in Marathi they call it chickeny because you sneeze, you tend to sneeze with it. I don't know in Marathi actually children, but in Gujarati we call it chickeny because it helps you to sneeze. So that is snuff. I don't know the Marathi word, but you can always find out. So they politely exchange snuff and tobacco with each other, and then to be more polite, they inquire about the reindeer, about their families, if everything is okay, if the reindeer that is pulling the sleigh is okay. So there is not one reindeer that pulls the sleigh. Sometimes there are 4 reindeers or 2 reindeers, or sometimes there are 6 reindeers. It depends on the size of the sleigh. Having finished their smoke, the lads jumped into their pulkas and off we started once more. So they finished smoking and greeting each other, and they jumped back onto the pulkas and they started moving on ahead. The party soon arrived at Felistio, or it was called a rest hut. A Felistio is a rest hut, like how we have inns over here. Over there they call it a Felistio. So remember, where they spent the night setting out again next morning. So these are like little cabins along the way, along the trail. You find them mostly in Europe. You find these little cabins, you see, and they are open. They don't have a lock. You don't have to pay for them. It is like a rest place for travelers that are passing by, because the land is so remote and things are so far away. So they have these rest places. The only thing that what you have to do in these cabins is that when you go there and rest, you have to keep it as neatly as you saw it. And if you light a fire, you have to clean the fireplace. You clean up the fireplace. You clean up. You wash up. If you drank coffee or made yourself a drink, hot drink or breakfast, you wash up the vessels. You wash up everything. You keep it all back in the same neat way you found it. And if you have used something from the cupboards like food stuff or something, you replace it with other food stuff that you have on you, so that the next traveler who comes can also enjoy the same. So this is like a kind of a thing that is done, but you cannot stay there, use it, leave it in a mess and go, because the next traveler who's coming up, who's following you, would probably catch up with you and would make you pay heavily for it. So this is what it is. So you have to be very careful. It was around 10:30 before they left the next morning. As the reindeers were away hunting for moss and had to be caught and rounded up. It took them a little time because the reindeers were left loose in the night. So they walked into the wild and they were eating. They normally eat moss and lichen. So the reindeers were having their meat, and these people had to round the reindeers up and start. So they started a bit late at around 10:30. While I was sitting in my sleigh waiting to start, an amusing incident happened. I was throwing my shawl over my shoulder when my reindeer caught sight of it, took fright, and plunging forward attempted to bolt away with me. So the reindeer caught sight of him throwing the shawl over his shoulder, and the shawl happened to get caught into the reindeer's horns, and the reindeer started running, and he took and got frightened, and he plunged forward, and he made an attempt to run away. Bolt means to run away with him. Fortunately, he was unable to get very far, since he was attached to another sleigh by a long rope wound around his horns. So he was also, the same reindeer was attached to another sleigh by a long rope which was wound around his horns. Reindeers have a lot of horns. You see, there's a joke that people in Lapland don't need clothes line. They don't need lines to dry their clothes. The reindeer's horns are enough. They put their clothes on the horns of the reindeer and they dry it up. So that's just a saying. Actually, it's not done, but it's just a saying because the reindeers have so many horns. So he was unable to get far because the rope was wound around his horns. As a result, he careered madly round and round in a circle like a teetotum top, while my sleigh bumped and swayed behind him. So here he says that he went round and round like a teetotum top. Now what is a teetotum top? A teetotum top is a kind of a thing that spins, like your top which spins. When you have a top, you know the top, the round part of the top, it goes on spinning and spinning, and you can see various different colored lines moving round and round in a circle. So while he bumped and swayed behind him, much to the amusement of the lambs. So he was bumping while his sleigh bumped and swayed behind him. So the reindeer ran round in circles. I clung to the side of the sleigh, weak with laughter, till at last the reindeer became wound up in his rope and we came to a standstill. The business over, the reindeer of the sleighs and pulkas were got into line, and to the merry tinkling of the bells and the excited barking of the dogs, we were off. So these people always travel with a pack of dogs and with the reindeers. And the reindeers have little bells around their neck. So when they are traveling, the bell goes on tinkling. The bell keeps on making a sound. So there's like music that is blowing in the wind. When the wind blows, the bell also rings. So one of the reindeers who pulled the baggage pulka was tied to the back of my sleigh. He had enormous horns which sometimes came alarmingly near, for he had an unpleasant habit of sniffing at my head and now and then attempting to nibble my leather helmet. Finally, it became so annoying that I had to turn around more than once and push his eager nose away. So this was how the reindeers kept in touch with their slave drivers. So this reindeer there was one reindeer attached to his baggage sleigh, and he was standing. Every time the reindeer turned around, his horns were so enormous that it came right up to his face, and he kept on sniffing and making unpleasant, alarming sounds. And he kept on sniffing near his head, near his helmet, leather helmet, because they wear leather helmets to keep themselves warm. So he kept on sniffing and he attempted to nibble the leather helmet. And nibble means to chew at the leather helmet. Finally, it was so annoying that he tended to turn around. Instead of looking towards the reindeer, he tended to turn around a bit and stay away from him. And he also pushed his nose away. So what did he do? He pushed his nose away and he turned around. So this is your lesson and you have your exercise. Please read this lesson and answer the questions. The questions are very easy. Please write the questions down. Write your answers. Don't attempt to write your questions. Write your answers in your notebook. Read the lesson. Answer your questions and your word practice. So you have the following sentences, words that you can use and make into your own sentences. You use these words to make in sentences of your own. You've got to explain the following. The drive was a sheer delight. What does it mean the drive was a sheer delight? So you have got to explain it. That what do you mean by this phrase? The drive was a sheer delight. So you can say, that it was, the air was crisp and it was clear and it was a good day and there was no wind, icy winds blowing, and the sleigh moved along with speed, and so it was like a sheer delight for the lapman and his sleigh. All served to put me in the highest of spirits. So that is another one. He careered madly round and round in a circle like a teetotum top. So that you know what I said earlier on, that he went round and round in circles and he kept on going till he entrapped his whole self with the rope, until the whole rope got coiled around, and then finally he couldn't move around anymore and he came to a standstill. Now here, like a teton top. So you have the teton top. So you can also describe the top when you spin a top and it spins round and round in the speed. So something you have to find out. If someone who lives in Lapland is called a lamb, what word is used for a person who lives in Scotland? So in Scotland, a person who lives in Scotland is called a Scot. Okay, a person living in Ceylon is called a Lankan. Now Ceylon is no more. First they were called Ceylonese, but Ceylon is no more. Ceylon is now Sri Lanka. So they are called Lankans, but previously they were called Ceylonese. A person in Burma is called a Burmese, and a person in China is called a Chinese. So this is how you do it. Why would the reindeer be looking for moss? Now why would the reindeer be looking for moss? Moss is a kind of a green weed which grows on stones and on the snow, and that has dew. That has dew in it. So when the reindeer chews it, that is the intake of the water the reindeer gets. They don't have water to drink because everything is covered with snow. But the moss holds moisture. So when they eat that moss, it's like water going down their throat. So remember that. So this is your lesson, and please do your do your homework and write your notes. Do your homework and write your notes. Stop. So I'll see you and I'll do the next lesson in a while.